Imagine the walls of an ancient subterranean dungeon, just completely suffocating. The air is entirely stagnant. It's thick with this damp smell of earth and, the crushing weight of thousands of tons of stone pressing down from above.
Right, there's absolutely no light down there.
Not a sliver, just a profound, absolute darkness that completely strips away everything you know about the surface world. And, well, that is exactly where we were heading today as we enter this deep dive into the source material for Chasing Death, episode 50, Before the Throne.
Yeah, heavy one today.
It really is. So I invite you to just sit back, maybe lower the lights in the room, and let the outside world fade away. Today, we are unraveling this narrative of relentless pursuit, inescapable fate, and the terrifying clash between absolute state power and unyielding personal faith in the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro.
And it's a genuinely atmospheric piece of source material. It
Yeah.
really demands that we consider the nature of power. We're stepping into a world where a single act of mercy,
Mm.
saving a young woman from a ritual fire,
Yes.
there's a deadly two-front manhunt.
Exactly. It's a two-front war for survival.
Yeah. It's a story about the sweeping industrialized systems of authority that hunt us in the physical world and the silent sanctuaries we are forced to build within our own lines when all those physical escape routes are just cut off.
The tension in this text is meticulously constructed. I mean, it begins with this fragile, almost agonizing false sense of security.
Oh, absolutely.
We find our protagonist, Zayn, on the third day of his journey, taking formal leave of Lila's parents. Remember, he's the one who rescued their daughter from the pyre. And he offers the aged father this urgent warning to send his daughter away and hide her.
Because Zayn knows what's coming.
Right. He knows the deceased husband's kinsmen and the local priests are going to come hunting. And the father's response, it reveals this heartbreaking naivety. The old man sighs and says the gods have finally grown merciful and that those local deities will watch over her.
Yeah, that moment highlights a profound disconnect in their realities. The father is clinging to the only worldview he's ever known. He's placing his trust in stone deities that, well, in the context of this empire, act more as tools of state control than protectors of the innocent.
Wow. Yeah. That's a grim way to look at it, but it's true.
It is. And Zayn's reaction is a masterclass in psychological restraint. He privately attributes their survival to the one true God, the Almighty, who showered them with divine grace. But he holds his tongue.
Which is so hard to do in that panicked moment.
Exactly. He recognizes that attempting to shatter an old man's lifelong belief system right then and there is completely futile. So instead, he translates his spiritual urgency into a practical, desperate plea. Just, keep her hidden inside the walls.
It's a pragmatic choice, but it leaves Zayn turning his back on the settlement with a really heavy conscience. He steps out into his own solitary journey, and he sneaks back into Mohenjo-Daro through the northwestern quarter.
Utilizing those quiet, labyrinthine alleyways.
Right. He makes a point to completely avoid the caravanserais, those crowded public roadside inns where merchants gather. He knows those are the obvious checkpoints, the first places the royal guards will scour. Because, he assassinated the High Pyre Guard.
Yeah, and the priesthood in this city isn't just a religious institution. It is the literal spine of the military state. The integration of religion and state violence in Mohenjo-Daro is absolute.
It's inescapable.
It really is. In this society, no ruling prince would dare defy the directives of the high priest. The temple and the crown operate as a single, cohesive, and brutal machine. Whenever a transgression of this magnitude occurs, it's not treated as a simple local crime. The full military force of the empire is mobilized.
And Zayn is moving through the alleys, operating under the assumption that if he can just remain unseen by human eyes, he can blend into the teeming crowds and survive. But the terrifying part isn't just that his face was seen during that chaotic confrontation at the mortuary, it's who saw him and how that person hunts. Exactly, Samba. We're introduced to this junior priest who also happens to be the son of the slain Pyre Guard. And Samba doesn't just rely on informants or wanted posters. The text reveals he is an adept sorcerer and a practiced astrologer.
Which completely shifts the dynamic of the hunt.
It's almost like ancient GPS triangulation. Samba isn't looking for physical footprints in the mud. He is mapping Zayn's coordinates using the alignment of the stars. It makes the very concept of a physical hiding spot completely obsolete.
And that shift in methodology fundamentally changes the nature of the pursuit. We move from a conventional policing action to a scenario where the cosmos itself is seemingly weaponized against the fugitive.
It's a cosmic bloodhound situation.
It's a perfect analogy. The tension for the reader becomes suffocating because we watch Zayn meticulously managing his physical footprint. He's sticking to the shadows, avoiding the ends, while remaining wholly oblivious that he's being tracked on an entirely different plane of existence.
It's chilling.
It is. Samba's dark arts reveal Zayn is hiding in the northwestern district, near a body of water, and those calculations bypass every single one of Zayn's physical precautions.
That supernatural surveillance is terrifying, but, well, it ultimately relies on physical vulnerabilities to close the trap. Zayn is a human being. He has to bathe, he has to step outside, and that biological necessity is exactly what Samba exploits.
Because Samba personalizes the hunt.
Right, he personally scouts the reservoirs and locates Zayn hiding in a dilapidated house owned by this destitute, kind-hearted potter nestled in a thick grove of trees. And Samba exercises this chilling, calculated patience. He spends the entire day concealed near the water, simply waiting.
Waiting until Zayn steps out in the late afternoon.
Yeah.
And we see a highly sophisticated level of systemic control in Samba's actions here. When he finally spots his father's killer, his physical reaction is intense, but he exercises total restraint.
He doesn't just charge at him.
No, he doesn't attack Zayn in a blind rage. He slips away into the shadows unnoticed, because he understands how to leverage the machinery of the state. He goes straight to the Imperial Palace, bypasses the standard guard captains, goes directly to the Grand Priest.
And secures a royal decree from the prince himself.
Exactly, to mobilize an overwhelming contingent of the king's army.
So the first pale light breaks over the horizon. Zayn walks down to the pond to bathe. And suddenly, standing on the bank is this heavily armed contingent of the military, with Samba standing triumphant beside the commander.
The trap snaps shut.
The commander threatens to reduce the Potter's house to rubble if Zayn tries to flee. But Zayn's reaction completely subverts the expectations of the ambush. He feels no fear for his own life. His only concern is for the gentle Potter who took him in.
It's a stunning moment of clarity for him.
He just extends his wrists and tells them that if they promise the innocent Potter will remain unharmed, he will surrender willingly.
Which demonstrates a core tenet of Zayn's character, right? His physical freedom is secondary to his moral obligations. But Samba, who is unable to contain his malice in the face of Zayn's calm demeanor, he just shrieks at the guards to bind Zayn in heavy chains.
Right. They drag him to the court in irons. They bind his wrists, his ankles, hoist him onto a horse, and transport him before the Grand Priest, and the sentencing is immediate.
Completely swift and brutal.
Zayn is condemned to be burned alive for taking a sacred soul and aiding a sacrifice's escape, and then he is thrust into the darkest bowels of the palace dungeon. But, wait, I have to push back here for a second.
What part?
Well, on the surface, voluntarily extending his wrist for those iron chains feels like a catastrophic defeat. He fought so hard to escape the mortuary, only to hand himself over. I struggle to see how this isn't just the tragic end of his resistance.
I get that. On a purely physical, tactical level, it absolutely is a defeat. But the text introduces a crucial psychological nuance here. Part of Zayn actually welcomed this capture.
Really, he wanted to be caught.
You have to consider the profound exhaustion of his journey. He was tired of hiding in cramped, broken huts, constantly looking over his shoulder, operating in the sheer state of hypervigilance. Getting captured, ironically, provided the one thing he couldn't achieve while on the run.
A direct path into the royal court.
Exactly. It forces a confrontation that he was otherwise too marginalized to initiate.
Ah, okay. That makes his reaction to the dungeon much more understandable, because when he's thrown into this narrow, suffocating, pitch-black cell, he doesn't panic.
Not at all.
He drops to the damp earthen floor, closes his eyes, and enters a state of deep, silent prayer to the one true God. He uses that absolute sensory deprivation as a canvas to construct something else entirely.
And that is the pivotal psychological mechanic of this section. The contrast between Zayn's external reality and his internal state is absolute. He's wrapped in heavy iron chains, buried in an airless subterranean labyrinth. Yet the text tells us that his absolute devotion detaches him entirely from his physical surroundings.
It's like the walls aren't even there.
Right. He loses all awareness of the grim walls pressing in. True love of the Creator, as the source describes it, liberates him from the anxieties of the physical world. He essentially constructs an untouchable inner sanctuary, right in the very dark, beating heart of enemy territory.
While Zayn finds this transcendent peace in the dark, the listener is violently pulled away to discover that the danger wasn't only hunting him, it was simultaneously closing its jaws around Lila.
It's a terrifying parallel narrative.
The narrative shifts focus back to that remote village where Zayn left her. The vindictive relatives of Lila's deceased husband haven't just accepted her absence. Outraged and believing her escape brought deep dishonor to their kinsman's soul, they weaponized the state for their own vendetta.
They team up with the priesthood.
Exactly. They petition for royal soldiers, and under the cover of night, a raiding party surges toward her village.
This perfectly illustrates how effectively a theocracy delegating its violence works. The state doesn't even need to initiate the hunt. The societal conditioning of the citizens does the work for them.
They police themselves.
Exactly. The kinsmen view her survival as an insult to their social standing and their religion, which makes them eager deputies of the crown. So at the exact same hour Zayn is crossing back into Mohenjo-Daro, these troops burst through the doors of Lila's family home.
The ensuing scene is just devastating. Her terrified elderly parents frantically try to hide her, and the hiding spot they choose perfectly encapsulates their utter powerlessness.
That's so bleak.
They try to conceal her inside a large, unlit clay oven, tossing a bundle of dry grass over the mouth of it. I mean, it brings to mind a terrified child pulling a thin blanket over their head to stop a monster in the dark. It underscores this vast, tragic power imbalance between simple agrarian villagers and the cold, industrialized efficiency of the royal military machine.
The psychology of that moment is rooted in sheer desperation. When human beings are faced with an overwhelming, insurmountable threat, the brain often regresses to these rudimentary survival instincts.
Seeking any kind of physical enclosure.
Right, the oven offers physical enclosure, mimicking safety. But against trained soldiers, it's tragically inadequate. A soldier simply steps forward, tosses the grass aside, and peers into the dark interior. They drag her out, trembling in the shadows, and declare her a fugitive of the crown who desecrated the laws of the king.
And her elderly parents are so overcome by the sheer terror of the military presence and the grief of losing their daughter that they physically collapse to the floor, unconscious.
They know what this means.
They understand the mechanics of their society well enough to know she's destined for the ritual fires. Lila weeps and screams, but her pleas fall on the deaf ears of soldiers who view her not as a person, but as a religious transgression. They bind her in heavy ropes, hoist her onto the back of a camel, and begin this grueling, uninterrupted journey spanning the rest of the night and the entire following day.
And you have to realize the physical toll of that journey is meant to break her spirit before she even reaches the capital. When they finally drag her into Mohenjo-Daro, she is brought directly before the grand priest.
He stares down at her with this cruel, mocking sneer.
Yeah, taunting her that no matter where she hides, their almighty gods will always guide the military's hands to recapture her. He uses theology to validate their violence.
The environment, the exhaustion, the taunts, everything is designed to induce absolute submission. But instead, we witness a magnificent psychological transformation in Lila.
It's arguably the most powerful moment in the text.
But the terror that defined her in the village, the trembling girl hiding in an oven, it just burns away. It's replaced by a surge of righteous indignation. She looks at the man who holds absolute custody of spiritual law in the empire. Her voice hardens, and she tells him directly that his gods are nothing but hollow lies.
It's incredible. When you strip away every ounce of hope from a person, you sometimes accidentally strip away their fear as well. Lila realizes she's going to die regardless of what she says.
There's no negotiating.
Exactly. And that realization is liberating. It removes the leverage the Grand Priest holds over her. Her unbridled defiance causes a collective gasp to echo through the hall.
And the Grand Priest, he erupts in a towering rage, threatening to physically tear her tongue from her throat. But Lila counters without wavering. She invites him to inflict whatever punishment he desires, stating she does not care for their gods, that their stone idols are utter fabrications, and that only her Lord, the one true God, is real.
Which is a death sentence in itself.
It gets her silenced and thrown into the deepest prison, which brings us to a moment of agonizing, dramatic irony. The soldiers haul Lila down into the subterranean dungeon, and they throw her into a pitch-black cell exactly 3 doors away from Zayn.
The spatial proximity is haunting. You have the man who risked his life and committed murder to save her, and the woman who is the reason he is awaiting the fire. Both of them are bound by the exact same faith, facing the exact same impending doom, sitting in the exact same pitch darkness.
Separated only by a few feet of stone.
And total silence. Completely unaware of each other's presence.
But that heavy silence in the dark room doesn't last. The heavy wooden doors of the cells grind open. Armored guards with massive battle axes step into the gloom. Zayn is let out, and simultaneously, Lila is marched away. We transition violently from the claustrophobic sensory deprivation of the dungeon into the blinding, oppressive opulence of the royal court for the narrative's climax.
And the architecture, the aesthetic of the Grand Court, it's engineered specifically to intimidate. It's a calculated visual contrast to the dungeon.
It's overwhelming.
Right? The Grand Court is assembled in rigid, disciplined rows, projecting order and military might. The Grand Priest stands at the center, leaning on a gleaming silver staff, his shaved head slathered in ritual olive oil that catches the light with a dull, slick sheen. It's a physical manifestation of anointing and authority.
The sensory overload continues as the drums, cymbals, and trumpets sound. The gatekeeper booms his proclamation, and the prince emerges. He's resplendent in glittering attire, wearing a crown studded with diamonds and precious stones, accompanied by his maternal aunt, the queen.
It's highly theatrical.
He takes his place on a throne situated right beside a peacock, displaying its iridescent blue and green plumage. It's an overwhelming projection of wealth, beauty, and absolute terrestrial authority. Every single element in that room is designed to make a prisoner feel small and insignificant.
Into this arena of calculated intimidation, the Grand Priest strikes his silver staff. A door opens, and Zayn, heavily bound in clanking iron chains, is led in. The staff strikes a second time, and Lila enters, similarly bound.
And the text emphasizes the profound astonishment here.
Yes, they are utterly stunned to find each other in this vast, hostile chamber. Forbidden from speaking, they share a single, silent look. It's a glance that communicates immense helplessness, vulnerability, and a shared understanding of the end.
The interrogation begins with Lila. The prince studies her with cold scrutiny, confirming her identity and ensuring she understands that her escape is an abominable transgression against their faith, one that can never be forgiven. He asks her directly if she understands that the absolute penalty for this defiance is death.
And she replies calmly that she is well aware of it.
And this is where the dynamic of the room fractures, right?
Yes. The prince presses her, his voice laced with genuine bewilderment. He literally cannot comprehend her composure. He asks if she wasn't seized with paralyzing fear of death when she chose to spit upon their holy gods. He expects a plea for mercy, a collapse into weeping submission, because that is the transactional nature of his power.
I am trying to wrap my head around the prince's reaction in this moment. You have the ultimate authority figure in Mohenjo-daro, surrounded by heavily armed guards, a grand priest, and the wealth of an empire, staring down at a young, physically powerless woman in chains. Yet, when she responds to his question, her voice rings out with commanding resonance.
It's a total role reversal.
She declares, "I do not fear death, your highness, for my faith rests entirely upon the almighty Lord of the universe. I have already broken free from the spiritual captivity of your false and hollow idols." So I have to ask you, why does that specific phrase, "I do not fear death," cause an icy dread to wash over the prince and every courtier in that room?
Because she has just bankrupted their entire system of control. The empire of Mohenjo-daro relies entirely on terror as its primary currency. The funeral pyres, the heavy chains, the executions, these aren't merely punishments. They are the mechanisms that enforce the social hierarchy. The prince's authority does not come from his diamond crown. It comes from his monopoly on violence.
So she doesn't fear the violence.
Exactly. By breaking free of that spiritual captivity, by looking the architect of her doom in the eye, and refusing to fear the punishment, Lila renders his ultimate weapon completely useless against her soul. She exposes the fundamental fragility of a state that relies solely on fear.
And his reaction is immediate, visceral proof of that fragility. The icy dread gives way to the absolute fury of impotence. Since he cannot break her mind, he resorts to destroying her body with horrifying excess.
Barbaric.
He roars at the grand priest to take her away, to flay the skin from her body while she still breathes, stuff her hollow hide with dry straw, and hang it from the main city gates as a warning. The grand priest accepts the order with sadistic satisfaction, and the guards drag Lila violently across the stone floor out of the chamber.
And the narrative leaves us dwelling on the devastating emotional toll this takes on Zayn. Remember, he had successfully built his inner sanctuary, bracing his own soul to face the flames. But watching Lila being hauled away the girl, he sacrificed his anonymity and committed murder to save it, cuts right through his spiritual armor.
It's agonizing.
It inflicts a pain far greater than any physical agony he was prepared to endure. He is forced to watch her disappear toward the dark depths of a horrifying execution, entirely helpless to intervene.
It is a truly agonizing, brutal conclusion to the chapter. We spend this entire deep dive watching the mechanics of the society slowly close a trap around both of them in the darkness. We analyze how Zayn built his fortress of peace and how Lila transformed her terror into a roaring, defiant voice.
But it all culminates in this horrific demonstration of absolute state power, bringing its full heavy weight down upon their inner convictions. It's the physical world asserting its brutal, bloody dominance over the spiritual one.
Because the systems of power in Mohenjo-Daro demand compliance through terror. When faced with two individuals who dared to look past that terror, the state's only recourse is to make the most horrifying example possible to ensure the illusion of its absolute control remains intact.
It's the only way the Empire knows how to survive.
Which leaves us sitting in the dark, staring at the walls of that subterranean cell we started in. As you let the outside world slowly back in, this narrative leaves you with a profound question to ponder long after our voices fade. When the vast, overwhelming systems of power around you can meticulously strip away your physical freedom, tear away your safety, and mandate the brutal end of your life, what is the true cost and the ultimate value of a faith that simply refuses to break?